Okay, thank you. Everyone, this is the June open meeting of the Guelph Police Services Board, and thank you for attending. I'm going to call the meeting to order right now and make our territorial acknowledgement. Today, we acknowledge the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation of the Anishinaabeg peoples on whose traditional territory we are meeting. Next, item 3.0, are there any declarations of a conflict or pecuniary interest from the board? Not seeing any, we'll move on to the closed session resolution. And Mayor Guthrie, I believe you were going to move this. Or not?
Yes.
Oh, there you go.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move, seconded by Councillor Billings, that $750 from the community account be awarded to Big Brothers Big Sisters.
And that's been seconded by Christine Billings. Okay. All those in favor? And that motion's carried. Thank you. On to item on to item 5.0, presentations and delegations. And today we're happy to have with us Sarah Bowers-Peter, and she's the program coordinator for Crime Stoppers Guelph Wellington. And it's always nice to see you here, Sarah. And so I'll just give you the floor, and then you can tell us about all the good things that have happened throughout the year.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I really appreciate the opportunity to join with you again, even though it is remotely. It's so nice to connect with you and let you know what we've been working on. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen and we'll get our PowerPoint going. Oh, sorry, this one's not letting me do it the way I normally do. I apologize. Love the technology, right?
Well, now you know why I say these things about meeting in person.
Exactly. Exactly. Hopefully everyone can see. Should be a full screen with the Crime Stoppers logo on it.
Yeah. Perfect on my screen.
Wonderful. All right. So once again, coming to you with an update on Crime Stoppers Guelph Wellington. The last time we spoke, we had just nicely moved through a transition from an in-office work environment, and we were looking at the future to find out how we were going to navigate being a not-for-profit charitable organization during a pandemic. So since we've last connected, we applied for and received CEBA funding, which was extremely helpful. We also applied for and received United Way, Guelph, and Guelph Community Foundation funding. Again, these are very crucial for us to be able to do things simply like me connecting with you today via a laptop. That was part of the grant that we applied for. So we appreciate very much their contributions to Crime Stoppers Guelph Wellington. These funds did allow for the transition, and once again, we're very proud of the fact that we did not miss a day of tip taking, and we were able to connect with the community literally every day last year and into this year. So the remote work setup that we have, it has been determined that this will be an ongoing structure for Crime Stoppers Guelph Wellington. It's actually worked so well that the board deems it fit to continue with this mode of operating. Our focus has been on engagement in new ways with the community. So knowing that this is a reality, how could we do this and do it well so that our messaging was impactful and our connection with the community that we've worked so hard to establish remained intact. So this was solidifying our relationships with our police partners as well, including Crime of the Week. That's the document that goes out every week, focusing and highlighting on a crime that's taken place in the community, making sure we're getting out these crimes consistently each week and the best possible content going out to the public so we can be most effective. And of course, officer training is a priority as well. We have developed an anti-racism strategy and inclusivity awareness for Crime Stoppers Guelph Wellington. The board felt that was very important in light of the developments over the past year, and this is going to be an ongoing directive for the board of directors. I am presently working with the Upper Grand District School Board to revitalize the presentations that I do both in person and online to have an anti-racism and inclusivity lens. So normally I would come to you and let you know about how many presentations I've done in a year. And as you can see by that first bullet point, normally we had 66 presentations in 2019, but in that should read August 2020 as opposed to 2021. I apologize. So in 2019, we had 66 presentations. Last year, I was only able to conduct 25, but 9 of those took place after August once we had the hardware in place and the technology to do it. So I'm quite pleased that we were able to resume once again with our presentations. However, our numbers dropped considerably for obvious reasons. We increased our social media presence, which was very important, and there was a lot of public health information out there. So people were connecting with social media, but to break through the public health messaging was a bit challenging, and that's not to take away in any way from the necessary public health messaging, but that seemed to be the lion's share of content. So we were working really hard to make sure people also remembered that Crime Stoppers was still open and active. So we did do a pivot to an online delivery, and you can see the list of our presentations there below. And the photo, these smiling faces are the Guelph South Rotary Club that I met with just a couple of weeks ago, which is an illustration of how our community has responded and welcomed me to come back to them, even if it is an online delivery. And although we can't talk about the specific cases that our tipsters have helped resolve, we can talk about our stats. And you can see a progression year over year with January of this year to May of 185 tips. So we're on track with last year. And to give a year synopsis, there was more than $71,000 in drugs, personal property, and cash recovered in 2020. To give you another reference point here, last month we had over 100 tips to Crime Stoppers, which is that's solid. If we hit 100, that's a good month, and to hit 108 is even better. We traditionally float between 60 and 70 tips in a month. So this just goes to show that our hard work is paying off. The public is remembering to use Crime Stoppers. And so year over year from 2020 to 2019, to show that how much a pandemic might have impacted us, we were only a handful of tips off of the previous year. And 2019 was a high watermark for us. So I'm quite pleased with the results from 2020. As of the end of the year, we had some pretty positive results. 33 charges were laid as a result of Crime Stoppers tipsters, and 8 cases were cleared. So for a smaller program, we've been impactful. And they're again showing you the tips from our stats from our incorporation through to the end of last month. The one trend I would like to draw your eye to is that for the first few months of this year, the board of directors have approved more rewards up until May of 2021 than we did in all of last year, which is great news because it means that we're obviously being effective and there's crimes being resolved. However, we have a new issue, which is our fundraising. The fundraising needs to be there to pay the tipster rewards. Our board of directors come from all across the city of Guelph and the county of Wellington, and you can see the breakdown there of our board of directors, a pretty good representation of all the communities. As far as board activity, we continue to meet via Zoom. We've reinvigorated the fundraising committee, which is very important. As I just mentioned, fundraising is going to be of utmost importance, as it always has been, but even more so with the challenges before us. We have developed an anti-racism policy, which is a statement. It also includes outreach to these communities, as well as training for our board members. As a result of some of the communications issues from last year, and it wasn't just us, it was other organizations as well. I developed a communications training module, which was implemented for Guelph Wellington, and it was very well received. Now, as I mentioned, fundraisers. So for this year, Guelph was our only location for our mulch sale, which we refer to as May Mulch Month. JL's Home Hardware was good enough to offer their 3 locations with $1 from each bag sold to go towards Crime Stoppers. However, it was the only mulch location we could have. Once again, our OPP property auction and barbecue is canceled last year, and it will be again this year. Our shredding events, however, did redeem us financially last year. We had our Guelph event at Skyjack, which broke our record, which was 2019. We did an amazing number. And then, of course, 2020 was even better than that. So we're so pleased and thankful to the residents of the city of Guelph for their outstanding support for us in this manner. We've also offered Crime Stoppers Guelph Wellington face masks because that seems to be the fashion statement for the ongoing trend for as far as we can see. We do offer them at $5 a mask. You can order them online, and these are mailed to you with a small portion of those funds going towards Crime Stoppers Guelph Wellington. And as I mentioned before, we know our increase in our rewards amounts is an issue with fundraising not being what it used to be. Very active on social media, and if you aren't following us, I would encourage you to do so. Every time you comment, share, tweet, like, you are helping increase the awareness and becoming an ambassador for Crime Stoppers Guelph Wellington. We're active on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn. I also sit on the Ontario Association of Crime Stoppers, which has been a great opportunity for me as well as for the program. That allows us to have a provincial voice, and the Crime Stoppers Guelph Wellington communications document and training that was developed locally was then adopted provincially when I brought it forward and presented it for best practices. Subsequently, my work on the Canadian Crime Stoppers Association, again, working with communications, social media, and website. The Crime Stoppers Guelph Wellington communications document was also brought forward by myself and adopted as being a helpful tool for the operation of that body. We're very proud of our partnerships within the community, specifically Guelph Wellington Women in Crisis, Safe Communities Wellington County, the Wellington Guelph Drug Strategy, and Victim Services Wellington. We're always open to partner with them and take advantage of the great relationships we have with them whenever we can. As I come to you every year, and I do tell you that we have challenges, but I usually try to give you an idea of how we're going to overcome them. However, I can't do too much about COVID-19. We're navigating this as best we can, as I know everyone is. Fundraisers, this is something our fundraising committee is addressing head on, and I'm fully confident that they will have some suggestions that they'll be able to bring forward in the coming months. Ongoing legal challenges, which is part of Crime Stoppers in every location, and we want to deal with that head on by increasing our officer training. We know that officers who understand how Crime Stoppers works are able to better use the information and keep it safe and anonymous for our tipsters as the officers move through the court process. And again, as I just mentioned, I was actually working with Inspector Gill in the recent days. We're working on our Crime of the Week content, making sure that the information we're putting out there will actually trigger a memory and motivate people to come forward with what they know about crime in our community. All right, and I know this is probably your favorite part of the presentation when you get to see how successful we have been this past year. Unfortunately, there was no in-person awards for either the international or the provincial organizations, but I am happy to share with you that the best radio spot for Crime Stoppers International was with our partner Magic 106 here in Guelph, and that was for a segment that we recorded in 2019, so we're very pleased with that one. Also, we received Best Specialized Program for EPAC, which is Educate Parents and Children Together. That program is delivered in partnership with Guelph Police Service, specifically Detective Constable Hugh Curry of the Internet Child Exploitation Unit. We received the Productivity Award for our population size, for the size of our program, and that is a result of some outstanding recoveries from drug tips that were provided to the program. So we share that award with our partners in investigation, so thank you for that. Also, the Paul D. Boudreau Coordinator of the Year, I was named to that, which was lovely. It would have been nicer to go to Australia to receive that award, but certainly was very happy to be named to that. And the Ontario Awards, again, held online, once again, received provincial recognition for our work with Magic 106. We also received accolades for Best Video with our partners, Whiteman TV. They're a community broadcaster in the county. Again, for EPAC. And then we won the Marla Moon Memorial Award of Excellence for the 5th straight year, which I'm certainly very proud of, and I know the board was quite thrilled to receive that as well. And these were also announced during an online presentation last August. I do want to draw your attention to our partnerships with some familiar faces you may see there. This was in lieu of our Crime Stoppers Month flag raising, and while I know many of you join me and freeze ourselves as we're out by the flagpole outside of City Hall, this time, because we couldn't gather, we tried an online engagement, and the CSGW series was very well received. And because I had the opportunity, I wanted to let everyone know that tonight we're also having an online engagement. This is called Parents Only, a virtual chat with parents, guardians, teachers, mentors, etc., about how to keep our kids safe, understanding cyber safety and how to protect your kids online. A lot of parents and guardians and adults aren't as aware of what the threats are out there. And again, we are partnering with Detective Constable Hugh Curry from the Internet Child Exploitation Unit. He's been a tremendous partner and resource for the program, and I encourage anyone who's interested to sign up for that right now, because we're going to be doing it tonight. All right, I know that was rather quick. Hopefully everyone was able to see that, and be happy to entertain any questions if there are any.
Are there any questions for Sarah from the board? Not seeing any. Oh, Sarah, could you just take your slides down, and then I have bigger pictures of the folks. No, that's fine.
Oh, I think it's been done for me. Was it not? No, stop sharing. I'm sorry.
Oh, there we go.
I'm sorry.
Go. Yeah. It's easier. Well, I don't think the glasses are working. It's easier to me. It's easier for me to see all the other members of the board when the pictures are bigger. Okay, well, not seeing or hearing any questions. I just want to say the amount of things you're engaged in is actually amazing, and I think it underlines the importance of your organization to the community, and the awards obviously are very deserved, and I just hope everyone understands how important Crime Stoppers is to our community. So I want to thank you for taking the time to come and outline this for us. And certainly, would you pass on the board's congratulations to all your board on the work that they've done, because we really do appreciate it. And so we're looking forward to seeing you next year with your report as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, and I do appreciate that, and I will absolutely pass on your remarks to our board of directors. Thank you so much, everyone.
Great. See you later. Thanks.
Bye. Okay,
next up, approval of the open meeting minutes from May 20th to 2021. Moved by Christine, seconded by Mayor Guthrie. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And approval of the agenda. Part 1 is consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Rod, moved by Rod, seconded by Christine. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Now we move to part 2, the discussion agenda. And 7.5 is a report, and this is regarding the board request for information on community safety. So, Chief, the floor is yours.
Sure. Can you hear me? Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So, thank you, Mr. Chair. So what I'm going to do is make my way through the report. I want to let the board know that in addition to Daryl and Judith, who are joining us today, John, who worked hard to draft this report, as well as Steve Gill is also with us today in the event there's any questions. Steve's been working as part of the development of the community safety project. And I think as we go through the report, you'll see there's some, we want to make sure we're always taking a holistic approach when we're looking at all the similar topics like this in the community. So before I start, so Mr. Chair, are there any questions before I start? No?
Doesn't appear there are.
Okay, so we understand this report will it's not all encompassing of all of the many issues and topics that we could talk about. The goal was to give the board some insight in relation to the motion, in relation to the request. If there's any more research required, we can certainly do that. As you can see in the document provided, it does provide some information in relation to the extent that there is a certain number of individuals who seem to be repeatedly released and then involved in offenses after. As you can see, there were 20 individuals over a 17-month period that were arrested 225 times with a cumulative total of over 1,200 offenses. I'll touch on it a little bit more as I kind of go through here, but one thing that's important to note is that recent changes in the criminal code, 493.1, kind of they compel the release under certain situations, but I'll touch on that a little bit in a second here. Obviously, the concern in relation to repeat offenders is something that has been a topic of conversation in our community and many other communities. And I think that the goal was to provide a bit of a snapshot in the last 17 months with respect to how the specifics here. I think it's really important as we have the conversation that there's a lot of community wellness issues that are involved in this conversation, and by that I mean we have to be mindful of our vulnerable populations, and by that I mean there are people who struggle through every day in relation to homelessness, addictions, as well as those who deal with mental health crises. So there's a lot of reasons, and I think it would be inappropriate to not be mindful of kind of some of the impacts or effects that lead to situations that individuals find themselves in. The numbers speak for themselves with respect to the number of breaches, as far as breach of probations. Obviously, there's driving offenses, drug offenses, etc. I think an important question that the community might ask is, why are people released from custody? And I think it's important to note that, so the criminal code was actually amended, and I know you can see this, but I'm going to make specific reference to the report. The criminal code was recently amended to make sure that the principle of restraint provides that police officers and justices shall give primary consideration to the release of accused at the earliest opportunity. So it's the criminal code makes it a responsibility, a requirement that release is considered, and with the least onerous conditions that are appropriate for the circumstances. And it went on to add that in recognition of the disproportionate impact of release decisions on disadvantaged populations, that police officers, justices, or judges give particular attention when making release decisions to the circumstances of Aboriginal accused and those accused who belong to a vulnerable population that's overrepresented in our justice system. And I think those are really important things to consider when you view the numbers, because it would be very much oversimplistic to just look at these numbers and think the arrest, the release, without understanding the reason. And I think we've talked at length. I know the mayor has had a lot of conversations with respect to secure housing for people in our community, as well as I know we've had a lot of conversations how we can expand impact to better support, as well as our community health center and all the work being done to support those who struggle with addictions. So what this report does, it gives you numbers, it gives you a snapshot with respect to how some of those situations manifest themselves towards arrests, releases, and offenses, but we have to be mindful of the underlying causes. And that's why, as a community, it's not simply a police or justice issue, but a community wellness issue. We note in the report, we will clearly continue to do our part to make to continue and enhance everything we can do from an education, prevention, and enforcement perspective. But this a comprehensive solution, I think, is only going to be found when we work together with the community to look at root causes. So I know I've kind of, maybe that's more, maybe I talked too specific, Mr. Chair, than when you were looking at that, but I wanted to give Daryl a chance to give a bit of insight. If you have anything you want to add, Daryl. Sorry, Deputy Gates.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Just over the years, there's been a change in philosophy. So at the beginning of my career, there was a higher proportion of people that you would incarcerate. And I think as you look at the data over the years, that philosophy didn't result in deterrence or a lowering of crime rate. So when the federal government changed the legislation to broaden the powers of police to release on terms, that gave the officers more leeway when they're releasing without having to put them in custody. So there's a delicate balance of when an officer releases somebody versus when they have to be held in custody and then a judge goes to see it. So to be blunt, crimes of violence will more likely result in somebody being held in custody. Crimes where somebody isn't harmed, less likelihood, and the officers have more provisions, very similar to what a justice of the peace would have when they would probably have them come before them, spend the night, and then they'd be released in the morning anyways. So those are where you're probably seeing a higher release because they were getting released beforehand. Now they're just not spending that one night in and they're getting released. So it may at first blush look like, oh, the police are releasing more people. Actually, those are people that were probably going to be released anyways by the courts the next morning. They're just saving the one night in. The same terms are resulting on those release documents that come before the persons that were charged.
Are there any questions for the chief or for the deputy? Mayor Guthrie.
Thanks, and through you, Mr. Chair, to whoever can answer this, and I'll just try to make them kind of rapid fire questions to get through them. Can you just expand on the word compel? Because I do understand, officers, as you said, are compelled under law to actually look to have to release in circumstances. Can you just expand on that a little bit? Just so that there's clarity for that, and that there is law that's actually almost sort of, as you said, the word compel them to do that.
Sure. Through you, Mr. Chair. And if Judith has any sage legal advice after I'm done, she can correct me. But probably the best thing I can do is so like this year. So the most recent criminal code, section 493.1. In making a decision under this part, a police officer, justice, or judge shall give primary consideration to the release of an accused at the earliest reasonable opportunity and on the least onerous conditions that are appropriate in the circumstance. So I could go on, but that it's a directive statement.
It's just very clear. Yeah. So then, as a follow-up to that, an officer arrests, an individual, and I see that the criminal statement there, the criminal code states shall, and in the circumstance. Are they not allowed to bring into their decision-making the previous 10 arrests that occurred over the last year, or 15 arrests, or so are they only able, with blinders on, to be able to look at the circumstance, singular, that they are compelled and shall release? If this is a habitual problem person that continually is being arrested for criminal activity, is that brought into the decision-making process by officers?
So I think, and it would be a very long discussion if we got into release procedures and all that stuff in relation to, because there's several more pages we could get into. But I think it's, so short answer, and Daryl, maybe correct me if you have anything to add, but there's certainly a totality of considerations, but there's also the directive with, like, we're in COVID. So there's a lot of reasons that, sorry, I see Peter has his hand up, Mr. Chair.
Yeah. Sorry, it's okay. You can complete the answer. I just have a question after.
Thank you. Yeah.
So I think there's certainly a totality, but that totality is kind of in relation to the nature of the offense at that time. Daryl, do you have anything more sage to offer there?
Circumstance is all-encompassing. It's not singular. I think that's what you're looking for, Mr. Mayor. It is in totality of the circumstance. Maybe it should be circumstances, but it would be the same meaning.
Okay. And then another question that I had was COVID. So you said the word, Chief. So how is this snapshot of this report today? How much of that is influenced? I mean, you're looking at a snapshot over the last basically year anyways. So is this last year with obviously the filter of COVID on it, on those data points? Would a non-COVID year prior to this data points that's in this report be similar or less than? What do you think?
I'm reluctant to make a prediction without doing kind of the longitudinal data. I'm not trying to be evasive, but I don't want to give the wrong answer. We could go back further to give, but that would obviously the staff would have to do the.
No. Okay, let me rephrase the question through you, Mr. Chair. Do you think that more releases are happening in the last year, judicial or police, due to COVID?
Yes, my instinct would be the last year and a half had an impact on releasing, certainly for the judicial system as well as police.
Yeah, and I kind of knew that would be the answer. I just, it's good to have that out in the open as well. My final question right now is, so there is a balancing act here, as you rightly stated, that these are individuals that more than likely have to have some sort of a community wrapped around services response. I don't deny that. Whether they are mental health, whether they are addictions issues. So I acknowledge that. I don't downplay it at all. But where is the balance on the other side of justice for the victims of these criminal activities? And do you have any commentary on that for people in the community that are experiencing the outline in the report of the petty thefts and all the other charges that are there that may not seem to be classified under violent, which, as the deputy chief mentioned, would definitely consider more holding these people in custody. But the petty theft is still a very personal thing to people. Your wallet is stolen, your bike is stolen, these things are a huge annoyance to people within our community. And to see a snapshot like you've provided within the report of individuals that are habitually doing the same thing over and over again, there has to be a level of balance to justice also being served. So where does that fall into play with this issue?
So through you, Mr. Chair. So that was a long question, Mr. Mayor. I'm hoping some of it was rhetorical. I think from our community's perspective, what are we doing? And I think that's a very fair question. And I think first and foremost, from an education, prevention, enforcement perspective, we have to look at an entire suite of options, we'll say. So our downtown team that I know became full-time, engaging downtown from an education perspective. For example, vehicle thefts, the number one way to prevent that is locking our vehicles. So we'll continue on education campaigns and things like that. I think that
So
from
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm interrupting I think you might have misunderstood my question. So first of all, my question wasn't rhetorical. I'm being very sincere. I'll try it again. There's a balancing act here of people needing help from a societal issue, a community response due to mental health, addictions, whatever. I don't have to explain. Everyone knows I fully support that. But then there's the judicial side. I'm not suggesting it's the policing side. The judicial side of things needs to also be considered with justice for the criminal acts that are happening over and over and over again. And I'm just wondering if you have any commentary, not the actions that the police are doing, but any commentary around, is that coming up with other police services? Is that is this an anomaly because of COVID? Is there things coming down the pipe that the community should know from criminal code issues? I don't know, but is there something that you can speak about on the justice side of these things so that balancing act is there on the other side? Did I explain it a bit better, Chief?
So it's difficult for me to comment on the justice system. That's why I was speaking on kind of what we can do, because our sphere of influence is the policing in Guelph. As far as the broader justice system, it's an incredibly complex discussion, and so there's a plethora of variables. So as far as we will engage enforcement, education, engagement, we will work with every, for example, like downtown preventative patrols. We had our beat project that was very a year and a half ago, very successful. Our community was very happy with the results because we had the resources we could dedicate, we could engage. Those are things we want to continue doing. And sometimes it is a function of resources and bandwidth. And I know we've had this conversation many times before. If we had the resources for a full-time beat team, for example, breaking in an auto theft, where we could constantly have a team that's engaging for property-related crimes, while our downtown team, as in our community mobilization unit, is also engaging with all of our all the agencies that support. So we're doing a holistic approach at the same time. That's what we're trying to do with the resources we have. But I don't think it's appropriate for me to get into the larger judicial system, because I don't know that issue and I can't really do it justice.
Oh, okay, that's fair, and I didn't mean to put you on the spot, Mr. Chair. I have a comment, and then I'm done. First of all, this was really an interesting report. Like it really was, and you rightly in your opening remarks, Chief, laid out. There's lots of nuances and context and criminal code and what is allowed and what is not allowed. I mean, I get it, and hopefully. There's a lot more behind the headlines. Let's put it that way. And so I appreciate that. I really do. So thank you through you, Mr. Chair, to staff that compiled this. The last thing is that I just want to echo that there is a frustration built up within the communities really about these issues. When we read in the media every day, a car was stolen, the individual was arrested, and then it lays out all the things that they were arrested for, and then it says, and 5 breach of probation. And this is, and you see it over and over and over again. There tends to be this narrative about what's happening. Why was this guy or lady or whatever arrested the 10th time, the 15th time? And I think it's important that I'll just end on this to the community, and I hope I'm echoing what is correct here, is there is the judicial justice side of things, and there is the community response side of things to a lot of these issues. And I think from an advocacy point of view, us as a service, us as a community, as the mayor, council, whatever, we need to be looking at this issue in that holistic way, a community response way, a justice reform way, if that, whatever it is, to try to deal with these issues, because you've been able through the report to quantify the actual kind of real life examples that are occurring. And I know, speaking to other mayors, this is happening across every community as well. And it may rightly be amplified during a COVID time. So with that, those are my remarks. And thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you again for the report. I think it sheds some light on some issues that we need to consider moving forward. So thank you.
Okay, and through you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Mayor, this is an incredibly important issue for our members in our service. So, for example, like I had a 16-year-old kid who saved for 2 years to buy a bike, and the first day he rode it to Centennial, it was stolen a couple of years ago. This is an incredibly important issue for our community. They need to know. They need to tell us when things like this happen. Janet, our analyst who built this report, if she doesn't know about situations, we can't have targeted enforcement. We can't plan projects. We can't have intelligence-based decisions. We don't have, I wish we did have the resources to have full-time teams to engage. Right now, we have to take a targeted approach using the resources we have. But it is an important issue for us because we know it's important to the community, and we want the community to continue to tell us, so we have the data points to do the best job we can to address these issues moving forward.
Oh, Peter McSherry.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And through you, I'd like to ask this question, whether it's to Chief Goby or Deputy Chief Goetz or to Judith. But it strikes me that some of these individuals have been arrested 24 times in the 17-month period, which would indicate to me that holding them in custody probably won't change a lot because they're probably not getting a whole lot of jail time or detention even upon conviction for these particular individuals. Is that a fair assessment?
Absolutely.
I'll let you take that.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, Judith, I was going to let you.
That's absolutely correct, Peter. I mean, we can arrest and rearrest and rearrest. And I mean, when you see the charges, it's, breach of probation. So as you well know, the person has already gone through the judicial process when they're on a probation as opposed to a breach of recognizance. So I honestly don't know what as the chief has alluded to, I mean, there is no answer from the perspective of, the police officers undertaking, the arrests and that type of thing. These are people who are, the judicial system has dealt with them and has put metes and bounds on them, as it were. But those judicial orders are not being adhered to. So,
are there any other questions for the chief on this issue? Rod Curran?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention something, especially what the mayor said about victims and that. Yeah, depending on the circumstances, if it's a dual procedure offense or indictable offense, the officer can release on an undertaking or bring him into the station and be released by the officer in charge. And you can put conditions on which will protect the victim. So there is something extra they can do if the circumstances deem that.
Okay, thank you. Christine Billings.
So through you, Mr. Chair, that's what I was going to ask about, are these terms and conditions in order to protect the victim. So, for example, where, can you give me an example of these terms and conditions? And when does intervention kick in? There's mental health issues, addiction issues. When does intervention kick in? Because right now, to me, it's just cyclical. It just keeps going and going and going.
You want to take that one, Daryl, or do you want me to?
I'll help you. The conditions range, and it can be a no contact term. It can be do not attend. So say there's an incident at 123 Main Street. One of the conditions would be do not attend within 100 meters of 123 Main Street. So those are all kind of conditions. And then our officers will follow up through checks for compliance on those terms. And if there's a breach, and that's where you'll see that you'll see a breach. It's not a breach of probation, but it's a breach of an officer undertaking. But so that's where those terms come in. When I spoke earlier, that's what terms a justice of the peace used to be able to put on, still can, but they kind of delegated some of those terms to us to reduce that one overnight stay. The ones that are being held are for the more serious crimes now, and so that's just the transition that's happened over time. They've given us some extra authorities, if you will, for release terms.
Okay, so through you, Mr. Chair, so that explains why the quote, the breach numbers are so high. But again, if it's a repeat offender, like we've been shown in this report, talking numerous times, when does intervention, when does help, when does that kick in instead of it just continuing on and on and on to be charged and released, charged and released?
It depends. That's not a very good answer, so I'll expand on it. The officer will have opportunities to try and engage so we don't just lock people up or arrest them. We will try and engage them in social services when we see there is a need. So obviously, if you see somebody stealing from a local grocery store and there's a need there because they're trying to feed their family, well, they'll try and engage them with social services to get them some help. They'll probably lay the charge still, or maybe not, depending on what the store's wishes are, but we'll try and engage them there. The primary share will rest with our judicial system in terms of engaging them with assistance. And, there have been special courts for addictions. There have been mental health courts. And, maybe as we progress through the province, so those courts will gain a little bit more power. And so we have a ways to go, but it's not necessarily a police role. We're kind of the ones getting them there. And then we're hoping that social agencies will then kick in. There are a number of services that will help reintegrate people that come out of custody after serving a sentence, so hopefully reduce recidivism. So that's the overall strategy that we as a city need to discuss and decide who to support and how to get those supports in place for those in need. Because the majority of the people that you're seeing in that report have underlying issues. Mm-hmm. There is something that got them there. They didn't come through school and all of a sudden say, I'm going to go be a criminal, I'm going to start stealing stuff, or I'm going to take whatever substances out there and become addicted to it. There are support mechanisms that need to be put in place for them.
Thanks, John.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Chair, I thought I would just also remind everyone, just based on Councillor Billings' question, that for the last 3 years, we as a police service, along with other community partners and the City of Guelph, have provided money towards the court support worker as one position that engages at the court with people that are habitually there to finally kind of intervene, as Councillor Billings used that word, to help them not continue the same sort of revolving door cycle that they're on, and to try to put them to help, to counseling, to addictions help, mental health situations where they can get the help that they require. So there is, on top of what the deputy mentioned, this police board has actually provided money towards the intervention side in a staffing member, along with other community partners too. And I know that that's been extremely successful, that one staffing position. I'm sure there could be more added, just like in everything, to help with this, but there's just another example where I think it's that community response that the chief and the report clearly stated.
Rod, Karen, did you have a question? Did I see your hand up earlier? Yeah, you're muted. Yeah.
No, I'm good, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on this matter? Not seeing any. Oh, Christine Billings.
Just real quick, through you, Mr. Chair, to the chief. Is this something that will be reported to the board, for example, every year, to see if these numbers are going to go down? Because everything the mayor said is absolutely correct. However, in this report, these numbers are quite high. So it's basically keeping a track, like, are we making progress? Because there's no doubt in my mind, yes, absolutely, homelessness, mental health issues, addiction are some of the core roots of the problem. So I was just wondering if it was something that you were going to continually report to the board, maybe even once a year, to see if we're making any community progress.
Sure. So we can certainly provide a report similar to this on a regular basis. But I think when we say, are we making progress, it's the collective we as a community.
Correct.
Versus, right? So, but
Correct.
like this is a data point. And as far as if a year from now we make progress with respect to increasing the wellness options, for example, whether it be addiction support, mental health support, secure housing for those struggling with secure housing. I think these numbers are symptomatic of the areas we need to improve. I think these are a symptom of the situation with respect to the underlying causes. I think these numbers are probably not, as a community, I don't think we're an anomaly here. I think you could have very similar, go to Barrie, go to Brantford. Those are the types of, again, I think it's the foundational, and I see, sorry, through Mr. Chair, I see the deputy has a comment.
If I may just add on, I'm wondering if a better report is actually the crime index that comes out, and that gives you an overall barometer of how we compare to everyone else in the province, actually the country for that matter. And I can tell you, the city of Guelph, although we're looking at some specific numbers here for recidivism, the city of Guelph is a very safe city. It really is. If you compare us anywhere else, it's very safe. Can we improve it? Absolutely. But right now we are in very good stead. It's a safe city. There's always some areas to improve upon. And but working with, as the chief said, with our other partners in the city to prevent the crime in the first place. And that's the key, is we need to focus on how do we stop somebody from getting into an addictive lifestyle, how to prevent them from becoming homeless, and prevent them from becoming violent even. Like, so it's how they connect into the overall society, and the neighborhood associations are great at that. It's already built. You just got to leverage it a little bit more. That's all.
I'm agreeing with you. My comment is, with that report, if we could, in the crime report, have that extra bullet point with respect to the repeat offenders, because we are, as a city, putting more money into more temporary shelters for the homeless. So what I'm trying to say is the data, meaning we're going to be putting money towards, right, shelters. So therefore, is that going to make a difference? And I would see that in those numbers, if it's going to make a difference or not. And so I just want to keep track if we're going to be making progress. That's all.
Okay, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. I just wondered, I guess I'm pretty sure maybe the answer is no, but I'm going to ask it anyways. Does privacy laws allow you to share or cross-share any of this information with the other stakeholders in the community where these individuals are probably known to be needing help? Like, again, I'm just like, we don't get the names, and rightly so. We shouldn't get the names on these, but if you look at, the top 20 people, and they are all also involved with mental health or addictions counseling or addictions issues as well in other community stakeholders, is there any type of round table where that data is shared so that you can wrap those individuals with the services that they require? Or is everyone so siloed that no one knows what's happening on the other side?
So from a community perspective, as far as the wraparound care that people like Rochelle and Gail, and exactly. I could name so many, Like we have like Helen, we have unbelievably great leaders that are supporting our community with respect to, is that cross-pollinating between cities? I'm not sure. I would have to, I'm not aware of that, but for example, there may be work that Rochelle does between cities, and I see Daryl just put his hand up again.
And just to be clear, I wasn't asking between cities, although that's an interesting point. I'm talking about internally. Like if the police officers have someone that's been arrested 25 times, rightly with addictions issues, and there's none of that information is being given to the community health center so that intervention can help with that individual, is the privacy laws creating hurdles to be able to share information to help individuals?
Judith, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I mean, historically, and I'm not certain, and I would have to check on this. Historically, the various community stakeholders in sort of the community mental health area and that type of thing, there has historically been a round table group that has gotten together, and people come to the round table and speak in terms of, community organization X has an individual who is suffering with, these problems, and there's a reach out to other organizations around the table to, see if supports can be given and that type of thing. I believe that is still a functioning group. Yes. And I know we had a member of our service who would attend at those meetings as well to, So I do believe that is out there in terms of, sort of on a regular basis. So for example, taking this, anonymized list of 20 people, no, we would not be able to go forward and start, no, we wouldn't be able to do that.
Yeah.
So
but now there is still some sharing that occurs with those round tables if required, but obviously not taking your top 20 list and said the word faxing. That's how old I am now. Faxing it off to somebody, some other stakeholder or whatever. Okay, I understand. I think the deputy has his hand up.
So the round tables that you're speaking of, they work well if the individual wants to help. So there's a consent piece in there to take that to the other agencies. I think that's what you were looking for.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
So, and Mr. You, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Go ahead, Chief.
Sorry, I was going to say, Mr. Mayor, I know the community has done a lot of work building our community safety plan as far as our community plan. Yeah. Steve, Inspector Gill is listening. These are the kind of conversations, these holistic discussions that should be part of that. I know the situation or previous situation tables that you referred to. Yeah. Steve, do you have any thoughts? Does any of this dovetail into the conversations you've been part of with the city?
Absolutely. And as been mentioned a number of times, we're certainly looking at a holistic approach. Privacy is very important. How we exchange that information, we have to be very careful with. But I can tell you with some of the programs that we have set up already, certainly with Impact, the hospital as well, we're already in a fairly decent position to share some information where, for example, Impact can follow it up. Yeah. And we often, as was mentioned before from the DEP, we do rely on consent from time to time. So we're always offering people that assistance, and we can pretty much make a number of contacts on their behalf if they're agreeable to it, but we do have to get that consent.
That's such great information, Steve. Thank you, Chief, for acknowledging him to speak up about that, because this is a community safety issue and it's way bigger than just a list of 20 people. So I fully acknowledge that. I would like to move a motion, Chair, but if it's okay, I'll let I saw the Chief's hand go up there.
Well, and I think it's important that from a community safety perspective, so the community can have some level of comfort. Like I'm looking at the presentation that I gave to you last fall, so only a few months ago in relation budget time, and it like last fall, as far as our overall crime severity rate had fallen 9.3%. Our violent crime had fallen by 17% to 52, which was the lowest CMA in Canada. The non-violent crime severity rates had fallen. Overall clearance rates had increased. B&Es had been down 28%. So I think for our community, I'm just trying to calibrate this discussion around the safety overall of the community, while not minimizing discussion, but giving that as a kind of a foundational point too as well.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. In fact, I'm glad you said that through you, Mr. Chair. It's one data point in amongst a wholesome review of what's actually happening in the entirety of the city. So I fully appreciate that. Mr. Chair, I just wanted to move a motion just that the services, police services board receive this report for information, and that we forward this report to our Pride partners as well, so it can be shared across other services, just so that they too can see the good work that this report did, and they can consider it as well. So if I could move that, that would be great. I think there is an advocacy piece here as well for more community supports, for upper level of funding, for lots of things there, but I think that would get too complicated, and that can be done without a motion. So,
Seconder, Christine, thank you. All those in favor? And that motion's carried. Thank you. Okay, Rod Curran.
Yeah, just a comment before we go. I just wanted to thank the chief when he gave those stats out, because that's a recognition of the work that our officers do on the street, plus our civilians. That's why the crime rate is going down. It's the people we hire and the training they get, and it's reflecting on the stats. So I just wanted to thank him for that.
Okay. So I think we're ready to move on to the next item, which is the chief's monthly report. Yes.
Okay. So first of all, thank you for the opportunity to have that discussion. As far as our monthly report, I think it's really important to start off on behalf of the service. We want to thank everybody in the community and public health and everyone in relation to the rollout of our vaccine program. I think we should acknowledge that. I know the mayor is at those meetings with me a couple of times a week. As of this morning, we're approaching 80% vaccinated for first doses. Public health, family health team, Linamar, and all the volunteers and leaders. We just want to say thanks because I think that's a real big success story. CMHA Executive Director Helen Fishburne and I will continue to have conversations in the community in relation to impact, the expansion of impact. We'll continue, and we've had a lot of discussions in the last couple of months. Helen and I will have more specific updates and reports. We continue to feel strongly that we want to lead by example and be the first community to have 24/7 support for those who need it. So we've had some conversations last month, and we'll have some more detailed updates in the months to come. And then the only other update this month for the board, I'm sure you all may have read in the Guelph Today recently, as far as we had a conversation with our Catholic school board in relation to with the director and in relation to our maintaining our school resource officer program with them for 21-22. And we look forward, we're going to be working hard with the Catholic school board to work together to find ways that we can always evolve and improve our program in a way that supports the school, our students, and really look to how do we capture metrics so we can tell the story of the program and then constantly evolve and grow. But I know we'll continue with our conversations as we talked about last month. As far as our public school board, we'll continue our really productive discussions in relation to how we'll develop service delivery options as well as we navigate a bit of a new approach, as we talked about last month. But I thought it was important to give the board an update in relation to how things are developing with the Catholic School Board. And we just want to say thanks to them for the opportunity to really kind of build the program and be part of that process together. And that, barring any questions, Mr. Chair, that's the extent of the update this month.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions for the chief? Not, yes, Mayor Guthrie.
I have no questions, Mr. Chair, but just a comment.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Through you, I just wanted you to know and the board that the impact report that you referenced that we got just recently, I happen to be able to share it with the Ontario Big City Mayors Caucus, so all 29 mayors that have 100,000 population or more, and it was really well received. And a lot of them have a similar program, I think, called COAST, and that's similar to Impact. And they are all like on the same side of seeing the need, and then the advocacy required up to the upper levels of government for these types of funding as well. And so I just wanted to, again, sort of thank through you, Mr. Chair, to everyone involved in sort of pulling that report together, because not only did it make an impact, pun intended, locally, but having it well received by many others across the province that I presented it to just shows the quality of work that's happening here with that service. So thank you very much.
Sure. And can I comment to that, Mr. Chair?
Sure, certainly.
And again, I know I say this often, but please remember, whether it be that report or any of the things we present, you see Daryl, Judith, and I, but there's 330 other people that have now been 15 months since the pandemic started. And we're spoiled. We have the privilege. We get to tell you about the great work that our members do. But it's not us who does it. We're just the voice. So it's really important. I want to just kind of end on that.
Okay, thank you for that. Let's move on to 7.7. Is there any new business? Not seeing any. We'll move on to information items. The next open meeting will be July 15th, which is the third Thursday of the month, 2:30 as usual. And the CAPG Governance Summit on policy development and police governance is Wednesday, June 30th, 11 to 3 p.m. And Rod, I understand that you'll be attending that, so we'll be interested in a report there. And Zone 5 meeting, Tuesday, September 14th, and that's 9:30 a.m. And Rod, I believe you're attending that one as well. And these are all, these aren't in-person meetings, right? They're all virtual. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay.
That's correct.
Thank you. Not seeing any other hands up. That leads us to our adjournment. So could I have a motion to adjourn? Christine Billings, seconded by Peter McSherry. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, everyone.